Coming up next, I don't like politicians, but David Simpson is not a politician. He's a representative of the people. He is the representative currently serving the 7th House District, the 82nd legislator of the great state of Texas. He has sponsored a bill for TSA nullification, House Bill 1938. Please give a big welcome for David Simpson.
Thank you very much. I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the Texas legislature meets every other year and only for 140 days in that year. The bad news is that the Texas legislature is in session. And as Mark Twain said, you better guard your pocketbook. I want to bring you a little bit of a report about what I've been doing. The man before me just stole a little bit of my thunder about nullification and interposition. So I'm going to skip over some of those things, but I'm just going to point out a few things real quickly and give a little report. First of all, I want to encourage you all to read 2 Chronicles 22 and 23. Those of you who are biblical scholars or Christians, but I would encourage you all to look at that. And there is an instance there in the scripture where there was usurpation, where there was a boy who should have been king, who was taken from the throne. And then in good time, he was put back on that throne by Jehoiada the priest. It's a great story, and it gives us biblical precedent for nullification and interposition. Of course, we could look at our Declaration of Independence of the 13 small United States back in 1776. We could look at our own Texas Declaration, which was just quoted from. But I'd like to read the preamble to the Texas Constitution, and then what I believe is the key section of our Texas Constitution that deals with nullification and interposition. The Texas Constitution begins with these words: that the general, great, and essential principles of liberty and free government may be recognized and established, we declare. And then, as our friend who just said, Texas is a free and independent state, subject only to the United States Constitution. And the maintenance of our free institutions and the perpetuity of the Union depend upon the preservation of the right of local self-government unimpaired to all the states. And if you skip down to section 29 in the Texas Bill of Rights, it says, to guard against transgressions, good biblical word, of the high powers herein delegated. The powers that I wield, along with 181 legislators, are very high powers, and they do not vest in me. They vest in us all, being made free and responsible citizens, made in the image of God. They were delegated to the Texas legislature. To guard against transgressions of the high powers herein delegated, we declare that everything in this Bill of Rights is accepted out of the general powers of the government and shall forever remain inviolate, and all laws contrary thereto or to the following provisions shall be void. Now, someone perhaps maybe already quoted that. But that gives us the legal, constitutional basis for treating laws that would be in violation of these basic Bill of Rights as void. And so there is this is the government that should be, or what the government de jure, the government by right. That is laid out by our Constitution. But we know that the government that is very different from the government that should be, the government by right. The government de facto is run by those who show up. But more than that, it is run. What happens is what we allow to happen. You see, this statute about these rights being inviolate is only as good as you and I stand up for those rights and see that they are in fact not enforced and that they are really void. Now, there's ways to do that with the Texas legislature. But it is in fact even more the responsibility of the executive part of the government to see to it that federal laws that usurp our basic rights are not enforced. And it's not my purpose today to go into that. But the governor and the sheriffs are very important in that process. We have a runaway government, not only in Washington, but to a degree here in Austin. And we have a runaway government because we have long time settled for it, and we have gone to sleep in our prosperity that we've enjoyed based upon the faithfulness and the responsibilities of generations before us. But in the last several decades, we as individuals and as families have asked the state government, the federal government, and even the local government to do what was never heard of done before. And we need to return to being independent, self-controlled, responsible citizens. Proverbs 28 verse 2 says that because of the transgressions of the land, many are its princes. We could put that in the modern vernacular. Because of irresponsibility, we have many laws, many legislators, many bureaucrats, many regulations. It's easy to blame people like me, and you should, who are in places that are wielding much power that you've delegated. But oftentimes we wield the power that we do wield because you've asked us to do it. You've asked us to take care of your parents, your children. And we need to acknowledge our faults. We need to take responsibility, and we need to do right ourselves. You can look on the spectrum of poor government. You have anarchy on the one hand, and you have totalitarianism on the other hand. But if you think of good government, you have self-government on the one hand, and you have civil government on the other. The more self-government we have, the less civil government that we need. Civil government really should be just one of four governments. We have self-government, the most important. Then we have family government and church government. Civil government really should be simply protecting life, liberty, and property and getting out of the way. Just enforcing contracts. Just punishing the wrongdoer. I'm way out of time. I got out of hand. Anyway, we need principled, patient, persistent, prayerful reform. And my purpose here really today was not to get into all that, but to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing. And so I don't forget it. You can go to stopaustonscanners.com and help me deal with the TSA. I've introduced two bills, 1937 and 1938. The first of those prohibits offensive groping touching searches. The second prohibits the virtual strip search scanners. Now I'm pleased to report that 1937, the one that prohibits the offensive, intimate touching searches, has been voted out of committee unanimously. And much of that is due to you all. There are people right here in this room that were very integrally involved in helping me put that legislation together. And I want to thank them. Now we've gotten over the biggest hurdle, and that is getting it filed and out of committee. Or not the biggest, but the biggest hurdle now is to get it out of the calendars committee. And I encourage you to look on the Texas Legislature website and see who's on that committee and to contact them. If you go to this website, stopaustonscanners.com, it will give you a means of contacting every part of the state government and letting them know about these bills. I encourage you to do that. I believe, by the blessing of God, I have the votes to see 1937 passed on the House floor if we can just get the bill there. The other bill, 1938, that prohibits the naked scanners, the whole body virtual strip scanners, was heard in committee about a week and a half ago. I'm hoping to see it come out of committee this Wednesday. I urge you to contact people on the Transportation Committee. But we have lots of support for both of those bills. I think both of them could pass if we get them to the floor. And if we get them to the floor soon, we have a chance at getting them through the Senate. I do have someone there who's willing to carry them. I wasn't able to get anybody to file them, so sadly it's not been working concurrently. I'm out of time, but I want to end with a couple of quotes. Of all the tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. We've gone from prudent caution in dealing with the terrorists to ridiculous excess. And we have invited this, and it's time that we stop, we and our families, and we say no, and do whatever we can. And I'll close with Sam Houston's words. That quote was from C.S. Lewis in 1948. Sam Houston said these words, and may they ever be true. Texas has yet to learn submission to any oppression, come from what source it may. May God help us to be responsible and govern ourselves so that we need little civil government. I covet your prayers and I thank you for your support. May God preserve our republic. Thank you.